I'll be joined by a leader of a third party, the third party at the moment, according to the polls, in British politics. That's Richard Tice, leader of the Reform Party, and the female activist Kellie-Jay Keen, aka Posie Parker. Now, as we've just been discussing, people are pretty fed up of the Conservative Party. That much is clear in the polls. And it's also clear from extensive polling that not everybody is very excited about Labour and the thought of an incoming Labour government, which should, you'd think, pave the way for other parties, a third party, to emerge. I'm going to discuss this now with Richard Tice, who is the leader of Reform, the Reform Party, and Kellie-Jay Keen, who is founder of Standing for Women and is attempting to form a new, or has been attempting to form a new political party called the Party of Women. Is that right, Kellie-Jay? The Party of Women?
It is, yes. That's us.
Richard, I'll start with you. You are now the third party in British politics. According to the latest polling, you're on 11%, above the Liberal Democrats on about 10%, though I accept these things are variable. It's taken you a while to get some of the political momentum you probably expected a bit sooner. Do you anticipate now surging ahead into 2024?
Yeah, look, building any brand in any walk of life takes time and a lot of hard work, in particular in the political world where you've got basically a two-party system, first past the post, that solidifies and reinforces that system. But actually, we're making great progress. No one else ever has achieved what Reform UK has achieved in 2 years, going from essentially somewhere around 1% up to 10, 11%. I suspect by early 24 we'll be 12% plus. And that's basically because people feel politically homeless in the two main parties. They both represent differing forms of socialism, high tax, high regulation, mass immigration, pro-net zero nanny state, meaning low growth. And people are saying, that's not very attractive. What else is out there? And word is spreading in the pubs and clubs and the bus stops. And I'm delighted we're making great, great progress. And look, Rome's not built in a day, but we're heading north, and success breeds success. So I think people should not underestimate us in the election year of 2024.
You changed your name from the Brexit Party to the Reform Party. You hinted in a recent article that you thought perhaps that had been a mistake. Do you still think that? Would you like to clarify that?
Look, fundamentally, the country needs massive reform everywhere. That's why we changed it. The Brexit Party is a very well-known brand. So a brand specialist would say, well, why did you change? We changed because we trusted the Conservatives. When they said get Brexit done, we thought they actually meant it. But actually, given that there's so many problems across the whole piece, we don't regret it. It just means it takes a bit longer for people to recognise who you are, where you've come from. What we've done on our logo is we've actually added in the words the Brexit Party. So we're called Reform UK, but the logo also includes the Brexit Party. That provides a bit of extra clarity and linkage for people. But no, we're very proud of our brand and what we're achieving.
And Kellie-Jay, your party was initially rejected, I think I'm right in saying, by the Electoral Commission. It seemed to me on a point of procedure.
Yeah.
Can you clarify what's going on there?
Well, look, I don't want to cast aspersions at the Commission Office, the Electoral Commission Office, but they have been rejecting us since March. So I've now instructed a barrister to make sure that every single T and I is perfectly dotted, because I just don't want to give them any reason to dismiss us again. So no stone left unturned. So that's why we've got a barrister, and I'm very confident in our electoral process and our democracy that will be registered really soon.
And your intention for you yourself is to stand either against Eddie Izzard in Sheffield or against Keir Starmer himself, is that right?
Yeah, well, I think Eddie's now going for Brighton. So it was going to be Keir Starmer, but look, it will depend as we near the election where I will stand. I think, there's there's a lot of lovely MPs right across the board that I would stand against. Stella Creasy would be one of them. I think there's so many, so many in all political parties who've just turned their backs on women, as well as huge swathes of the population. You know, most people know that women don't have penises, and it's about time that parties said it. And the Conservative Party are a little bit too late with their sort of strength on this topic, and they're still really not far enough for me. You know, they're still, this stuff has got ravaged through schools. You know, I visited a school recently. This stuff is everywhere. So there is a calling for a party that represents women, and that would be mine.
And by this stuff, you mean the trans agenda?
I don't just think it's that, but it's that, look, that is the most egregious lie, and upon which the foundation, upon which so many other lies rest. So the GRA would be something, the Gender Recognition Act would be something I would like to see completely repealed. I want all of this stuff out of schools as of yesterday, not just trans stuff, but other lies that we consistently tell children. But I just think this is the most egregious when you're talking about the fundamentals upon which all of us are here. You know, a woman gives birth to babies, and a man is the person that impregnates that woman. And I think it's bonkers. But yeah, there are too many lies, but that's the biggest.
Richard, Kelly's attempts to speak up for women there are often branded as sort of culture warring and so on. Do you think the Reform Party is in a good position on the culture wars? Or do you think the Tory party, which is sort of dabbling a little bit in culture wars, has stolen a bit of your thunder there?
Far from it, actually. The Tory party have given up on standing up for British culture, British values. They're all over the place on this. And it's only Reform, actually, that has been really strong amongst the top 3 or 4 polling parties. We've made it absolutely crystal clear there should be none of this gender questioning, allowing any social transitioning, any debate about this in schools up to the age of 18. We think it's absurd. I'm going to campaign events up and down the country. Parents and grandparents are utterly fuming and furious at what is going along. The sort of the hiding of information, the third-party providers, some of whom are providing material that is nothing short, frankly, of revolting. We've been crystal clear, we'd ban the whole lot. And it's the sort of thing that actually you could do within just a few days. Let me tell you what I'd do, Freddie. If I was Prime Minister, I'd instruct the Secretary of State for Education to write to Ofsted, to write to every single head teacher of every primary and secondary school saying this stops by Friday, and anybody who carries on is fired. No ifs, no buts. It's a breach of contract. Here's the most important thing though. It's the clearest, most dangerous breach of safeguarding I've ever seen. And I've been a governor of 4 different schools. You see all these safeguarding documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages long. This is the most obvious, clear breach, and it should stop. And for the Prime Minister to say back in March that he was going to carry out an urgent review, my definition of urgent is by the end of the day or the end of the week. We're in December and there's no sign of this review. They're all over the place and they're letting children down. It's a disgrace.
Kellie-Jay, I know you've got your own political ambitions, but are you persuaded by Richard's pitch there?
I am. I think it's a barometer of where we are as a society that the smaller of the major 3 parties is having to say this, because the 2 main parties have failed dismally to say it. But yes, look, anybody speaking about the truth about this, about whether or not human beings can actually change sex, I welcome all of that discourse. I think it's really, really needed. The one thing that we want to do as a party of women is we want to build from the bottom up. So whilst I have ambitions to become an MP, or I really have ambitions to make a big noise so that other people can understand what the issues are and force people into positions. That's my ambition. But I want grind up. So I want women in seats right across the country in councils, because that's where really direct politics happens, whether or not an elderly woman in her home, when she says she'd like a female carer to come and intimately care for her, I want that woman to know that a female will actually turn up, not a cheap worker who's a man, or a man in a dress. I just think those things are really crucial. So I'd like us just to populate the local councils and the PCCs and all of those where direct democracy and politics really happen.
Do you think people will call you a single issue party, a single issue politician? Do you think you are? I mean, are you the women don't have penises candidate?
Well, I am that. But I think, look, women don't live single issue lives. And I think it's really important for both men and women to be able to walk about their lives and expect their public services and institutions to recognize them as men and women, and that foster caring and adoption services and all of those other services are not co-opted by what I think is a quasi-religious, pernicious cult of transgenderism and lies. And like I said, there's other lies that stem from that. So whilst it may be single issue, I mean, the Brexit Party may have been accused of being single issue, and I believe we are now no longer in Europe. So I think the power of single issue is perhaps something that we need in this country at the moment, so that people can really kind of stake their claim to a particular principle. And that's something that I think we stand for at the Party of Women, or we will stand for once we're registered, is a principle-led party, which is not, it's not like come and just put all of your eggs in our basket, but it's, if you care about this particular issue, this is what we're talking about.
And Richard, I suppose the question I wanted to ask actually both of you is on this particular issue of the transgender agenda against women's rights. The Tory party have sort of dabbled with it, as you say, perhaps ineffectively, Richard. But do we, as in the media, do we underestimate quite how the strength of feeling that this has generated? Actually, Posie, you answer this first. The strength of feeling that this has generated among women, that this issue is now generating, and the extent to which women feel that their rights are now being infringed by a hostile agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I see my job as not to convince people, because everybody I think already agrees with me. It's just about ensuring that women understand, and men. I don't want to just, I am speaking mainly to women, but I think it impacts all of us, that actually there is a space for those views, that it's no longer, a silent majority. People have to speak up, and just being a little bit apathetic and thinking it's happening somewhere else is not good enough anymore, because for a start, it is happening. It's happening everywhere. I spoke to 2 teachers a couple of weeks ago who barefaced lied to parents. It's one of the most horrific sort of conversations I've ever had to have, where you just understand that these people are pretty much paid up members of a cult, and they are willing to take the place of parents and make decisions about people's children behind their back, and sort of treat parents with absolute contempt. So I think once people understand that it's in their children's schools, I wouldn't like to predict how they vote in the next election, but it can't be for either the Conservatives or Labour if they really care about this issue.
And Richard, have you noticed that? I mean, because your main issue, I think, as a party is immigration now. Certainly, post Brexit, you are becoming the party that talks about what you and Nigel Farage call the population crisis in Britain. But how much does that go hand in hand with this more culture war stuff that is bubbling under the surface in British politics?
Look, there are multiple challenges across, frankly, the whole nation, and many of them interrelate. But this issue, the trans agenda, it has arisen so quickly. It surprised so many decent, ordinary folk and parents up and down the country. And when I speak to groups, they just can't believe it. It flies in the face, frankly, of all basic common sense. And I think too often, actually, politicians fly in the face of basic common sense. Look, we're pretty strong and robust on a number of these issues. We're comfortable talking about the uncomfortable for many people. We feel that, in a sense, we've got the courage to put our head above the parapet and take the flak, because so many parents, they get in real trouble if they try and raise this, as I'm sure Kelly has seen with teachers or head teachers. They're worried that in some way their child might be discriminated against. As far as I'm concerned, It's absolutely simple. There are two sexes and two genders, male and female. You might feel something else at some point because you've had a bad day or a good day, fine. But I'm just not buying all this 72 gender, 100 gender stuff. You talk to ordinary folk up and down the country, they look at you with amazement. They think it's nonsense, they think it's absurd, and they just want actually politicians to get on to make people's lives better. And they're just furious that so much time and sort of cowardice is wasted on trying to say that, frankly, something just basically isn't biologically true, and sort of pretend that it is, and pretend that women can have penises. I mean, it's the most absurd statement in the world.
I'm not going to try and do what a lot of journalists have done with you, Richard, which is to try and insinuate there's some sort of rivalry between you and Nigel Farage, because you always reject that idea. But he has just left the celebrity jungle in third place. His public profile has increased. He's made a lot of hints about coming into politics. He's made hints about wanting to lead the Conservative Party, perhaps after it implodes at the next general election. Where do you stand on if Nigel Farage wants to go back to the Reform Party? Is he the leader? Do you step aside? What happens?
Look, he's had great fun playing mischief and causing division and divide within the Conservative Party, but I remind everybody, he's our honorary president. He set up the Reform Party when it was called the Brexit Party. He has come back from the jungle on great form, a little bit lighter, loved the experience, his poll rating's gone through the roof. He's utterly furious at what's transpired with regard to some of the key issues that affect our quality of life. And I've said very clearly to everybody, the more help that we can get, the better. The more that Nigel is able to help get stuck in, put his shoulder behind the wheel, and frankly, help save Britain from the state that we're in, then the better. And I suspect you'll be hearing a lot more on this matter in the coming weeks.
Richard and Kellie-Jay, wish you both a politically prosperous 2024, because given the moribund state of British politics, anything new is good, I think, in our opinion, at The Spectator.